Welcome back to the Book Nook podcast.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be settling in, with a cup of tea and taking a deep dive into Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
Sounds lovely.
And we have such a fascinating collection of sources to guide us today.
Oh, yeah.
We have a dedicated book review blog, a really insightful literary analysis,
Okay.
and to spice things up,
Okay.
not one but two enthusiastic booktube reviews.
Wow. So it's like having like a really lively book club right here in the studio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of book clubs, Pride and Prejudice just seems to resonate just as strongly today as it did, centuries ago.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Book clubs, film adaptations, endless fan art online. I mean, this story clearly has a hold on us.
It does.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that Austen she had a knack for tapping into these like really timeless themes. Think about it, like humor, social satire, a dash of romance. These are all elements that just speak to human experience across generations. I mean, we might not wear empire waist dresses anymore.
Right.
But the dynamics of love, family, and societal expectations, I mean, those are things we still grapple with today.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so fascinating to see how these themes just play out through such like memorable characters.
Right.
I mean, Elizabeth Bennet, she's practically a literary icon at this point.
She is.
The book review blog even calls her a timeless heroine.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I mean, her intelligence, her wit, her refusal to be confined by, the expectations of her time. Those qualities just really strike a chord with readers even today.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable about Elizabeth is that she isn't just defying, social norms just for the sake of rebellion.
Right.
She's driven by a deep sense of integrity, a desire to live authentically, and like a sharp awareness of the injustices around her. And that kind of independent spirit was radical in Austen's time.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's still something that we admire and aspire to today.
I think that's a great point. She's not a passive heroine just waiting for a prince to rescue her.
No.
She is actively shaping her own destiny, and that just resonates so strongly with modern readers.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's Mr. Darcy, our brooding romantic hero.
Of course.
The literary analysis we have really delves into the complexity of his character, starting with that initial Pride and Prejudice. That literally gives the book its title.
Exactly. And that's what makes his transformation so fascinating. He starts off as this like aloof, judgmental figure, very much a product of his privileged upbringing. But through his interactions with Elizabeth, and especially through that pivotal letter he writes to her, we see him confront his own biases and just begin to change.
Yeah.
He goes from being judgmental to showing genuine care and even taking action to protect Elizabeth's family, even when it risks his own reputation.
Right. And it's that journey of self-discovery that many of us can probably relate to on some level.
Yes.
I mean, who hasn't had to confront their own preconceived notions or examine their own prejudices?
Right. It's something we're all still grappling with today,
Both individually and as a society.
Precisely. And that's part of what makes Pride and Prejudice so enduring. It's not just a charming romance. It's a reflection on human nature, on the ways we judge each other and on the potential we all have for growth and change.
And let's not forget the sheer brilliance of Austen's writing.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The booktube reviewers were gushing over her sparkling dialogue and peppery wit.
Yes.
And I love how she manages to be both hilarious and incisive at the same time.
It's amazing.
I mean, Mrs. Bennet alone provides endless comedic material.
Right.
But beneath that humor, there's a sharp critique of the societal pressures women faced in that era.
Exactly. The book review blog does a fantastic job of unpacking that.
Right.
Like, think about the pressure on women to marry. Well, it wasn't just about finding love.
Yeah.
It was often about economic survival. Austen lays bare the stark realities of a society where women had very limited options.
Right.
It's a reminder that even a novel as seemingly lighthearted as Pride and Prejudice can be a powerful commentary on social inequalities.
It's amazing how Austen manages to weave together these different layers.
I know.
The romance, the satire, the social commentary into such a captivating story.
Right.
Before we delve deeper into the characters and themes,
I
want to take a moment to remind you, our amazing listeners, that if you're enjoying this deep dive into Pride and Prejudice, we'd love for you to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast.
Please.
And leave us a review.
Yes.
Your support means the world to us.
And now back to those fascinating characters.
Yeah.
Shall we compare and contrast the very different paths taken by the Bennet sisters?
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Austen uses the sisters to explore all these different facets of womanhood in that era.
Right.
You have Jane, who's so trusting and good-hearted, almost to a fault. The booktube reviewers pointed out how, her naive belief in inherent goodness almost leads to heartbreak.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if Austen is kind of subtly critiquing that kind of blind optimism.
Right.
Like, is it truly virtuous? Or is there a danger in being too willing to see the best in people?
Right.
Especially when society itself is built on, certain power imbalances.
That's a brilliant observation. And then you have Lydia, who's practically a cautionary tale.
Right.
Her impulsiveness, her eagerness to be swept off her feet.
Right.
It ultimately puts her entire family's reputation at risk.
Right. It's hard not to see Lydia's story as a commentary on, the precarious position of women in that society without financial independence.
Right.
Reputation was everything.
Everything.
One misstep could ruin your prospects for life.
Exactly. It underscores how marriage wasn't just a romantic ideal. It was an economic necessity for most women.
Right.
Austen doesn't shy away from showing the darker side of that reality.
And what about Mr. Bennet?
Mr. Bennet.
He seems to be a perpetual source of debate among Austen fans.
He is.
Some find him charmingly witty,
Right.
while others see him as a neglectful father.
Right.
The BookTube review was pretty critical of his hands-off approach to parenting.
I think it's interesting to consider Mr. Bennet as a product of his time and social class.
Okay.
Yes, he's witty and observant, but he also seems detached from the realities his daughters face.
Yeah.
He often retreats into his library and books, leaving Mrs. Bennet to manage the anxieties of securing their futures.
Right. It makes me wonder if Austen is using him to represent a certain type of privilege, the privilege to be aloof from the messy realities of life,
Right.
especially the burdens placed on women.
That's a thought-provoking interpretation. It certainly adds another layer to our understanding of the dynamics within the Bennet family.
Speaking of dynamics,
Yes.
I think it's worth revisiting the whole idea of first impressions.
Okay.
Pride and Prejudice is practically a masterclass in how easily we misjudge each other based on superficial observations.
Absolutely. Elizabeth's initial dislike of Darcy and his of her stems from those very assumptions.
Right.
He sees her family's lower social status and judges her accordingly, while she sees his pride as arrogance and misinterprets his reserved nature.
It makes me think about how often we make snap judgments about people based on their appearance, their social media profiles, or even just a few fleeting interactions.
It's a timeless human flaw, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're so quick to categorize and label,
Right.
often to the detriment of truly understanding someone.
And what's so brilliant about Austen is that she shows us the consequences of those misjudgments.
Right.
Elizabeth and Darcy both have to actively challenge their preconceived notions to see each other clearly.
And it's through that process of self-reflection, that willingness to admit they were wrong, that they're able to grow both individually and as a couple.
It's a powerful message, and one that's so relevant today. We're constantly bombarded with information and opinions.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into the trap of judging based on surface-level impressions.
Yeah.
But Pride and Prejudice reminds us to take the time to look deeper, to question our assumptions.
Yes.
And to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
In doing so, we might just discover something wonderful.
Yeah.
Just as Elizabeth and Darcy do.
It really is a testament to Austen's genius that a story written over 2 centuries ago can still feel so fresh and relevant to our lives today.
I know, it's amazing.
Before we wrap up our discussion, I want to remind you that if you're enjoying this deep dive, please consider subscribing to the Book Nook podcast.
Yes.
And leaving us a review.
We would really appreciate it.
We appreciate your support. Now, where were we?
The complexities of the Bennet family.
Ah, yes, the complexities of the Bennet family. It's interesting how even the secondary characters in Pride and Prejudice, they reveal so much about the society Austen was portraying.
Oh, totally.
Like Mr. Collins, for example.
Oh, yes.
He's almost a caricature of, a certain type of social climber.
Right.
Utterly oblivious to his own absurdity.
I know he embodies that blend of social ambition and moral hypocrisy that Austen was so brilliant at satirizing. He's so focused on his own advancement that he's just completely blind to the feelings of those around him, especially Elizabeth.
Yeah, and yet he's so convinced of his own importance and propriety.
I know.
It's almost painful to watch him blunder through his interactions with the Bennet family,
Right.
completely missing the mark every time.
It's a reminder that true character isn't about social status or wealth, but about integrity, empathy, and self-awareness.
Right.
Qualities that Mr. Collins sorely lacks.
And what about Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's friend, who ends up marrying Mr. Collins?
Oh, that always sparks debate.
I know.
Some see her as a pragmatist making the best of a limited situation,
Right.
while others criticize her for settling.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to remember the limited options available to women in that era.
Oh, absolutely.
Marriage wasn't simply about love.
Right.
It was about economic security.
Yes.
Charlotte, unlike Elizabeth,
Yeah.
doesn't have the financial cushion of a wealthy family to fall back on.
Right. Her decision to marry Mr. Collins, while perhaps not romantic,
Yeah.
makes sense in the context of her social reality.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights the difficult choices women face when their future depended on finding a husband,
Yeah.
even one as insufferable as Mr. Collins.
Exactly. Austen isn't passing judgment on Charlotte.
No.
She's simply portraying the complexities of her situation with honesty and empathy.
I agree.
It's a reminder that even in a novel filled with romance and happy endings,
Right.
Austen doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of her time.
Right. And what about the ending? Elizabeth and Darcy find love.
They do.
But do you think Austen is suggesting that marriage is like the ultimate goal for women?
That's a great question.
Mm.
It's important to remember that Pride and Prejudice is in many ways a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
But even within that framework, Austen gives Elizabeth agency.
Yes.
She chooses Darcy not out of societal pressure,
Right.
but because she's come to respect and admire him.
And Darcy, in turn, has to overcome his pride and acknowledge Elizabeth's worth as an individual, not just as a suitable match for his social standing.
Right. Their love story is based on mutual respect and understanding,
Yes.
not just on social convention.
Precisely. Their relationship evolves throughout the novel.
Yeah.
And it's that growth, that journey of self-discovery that makes their eventual happiness so satisfying. They both have to learn and change in order to be worthy of each other.
It's a far more nuanced and empowering message than simply saying that marriage is the ultimate goal for women.
Right.
Austen is showing us that true happiness comes from choosing a partner who sees and values you for who you are.
And that's a message that resonates just as strongly today as it did 2 centuries ago.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for us as modern readers? I think Pride and Prejudice offers so much more than just a charming escape.
I agree.
It prompts us to examine our own biases, to challenge social norms, and to strive for genuine connection in our relationships.
It's a timeless story about the complexities of human nature, the pitfalls of pride and prejudice, and the transformative power of love and self-awareness.
Beautifully put. It's been an absolute pleasure unpacking the layers of Pride and Prejudice with you today.
Likewise.
For those of you listening who haven't yet experienced the delight of this novel, we urge you to check out the link in the episode description and grab a copy.
Yes.
It's a timeless treasure waiting to be discovered.
And for those who are already familiar with the story, we hope this deep dive has sparked some new insights and inspired you to revisit this literary masterpiece with fresh eyes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Book Nook Podcast.
It was a pleasure being here.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Pride and Prejudice. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review if you enjoyed the show. And be sure to check the link in the description to get your copy of the book. Thanks for listening.